Hello, I am Dragon and welcome to our next video in our Mod Tool Tutorial series, this one concerning rebels and separatism. These are two small mechanisms in the game, small features, that allows you to complicate the life of a player. Separatism is highly dependent on cultures in your provinces, and rebels are simply armies spawning in your country, trying to fight for their freedom, either by plunging your country into anarchy, joining neighboring country, or creating their own country. So let's start with rebels here. This is the rebels editor. And as you can see here, we can set up some effects. First of all, there is the effects for removing armies. And here you can set up the starting effects that will remove some percentage of army of your country and add them to the rebel armies. In the second editor, you can simply input some effects that will add new armies for your rebels. So this one takes from the country and give to rebels, and this one simply give to rebels completely new units. In the third editor here, you can choose an effect which will create new country for your rebels. There is a specific create new country effect that can be put here, and it will determine, for example, starting money, starting action points, and starting army of the new country, as well as the prefix of its name. And here we have effects for anarchy in country. And these are one country effects that allow you to choose different penalties when the rebellion wins and they plunge your country into an anarchy. And here underneath those effects editors, we have some input fields which specify how anarchy works. The first one, rebellion timer, is simply a lifespan of a rebellion. If we, for example, put here 250, that means that this rebellion will exist for 250 days, and if it is still existing after that time, it will win the war. And if you engage the rebellion army with your own units and start a war theater, then this timer will stop, and it will not count down until there are no more theaters involving rebellion army. Here underneath we have the minimum time interval in days to check for rebels. So basically, in order for rebellions to happen in random time, we have created those two fields, and after one check of a rebellion, next check will happen between 80 and 150 days later. And you can of course change those values how you see fit. Next we have two other values here, money for rebel demands and action points for rebel demands. In our standard Grand Campaign scenario, this is disabled, so left at 0. But you can instead input a number here, for example 10,000 money. And when the rebellion happens, rebels will first send you demands of 10,000 money. And if you accept, you will lose 10,000 money, but the rebellion will immediately end, without any other effects. But the more interesting setting is to leave that at 0 and let rebellions happen. And this input field here determines how much time player would have to accept rebels' demands. And here the setting at the bottom is a pretty important one, because like I said before, rebellion can end in three ways. Either by starting an anarchy in your country, either by joining neighboring country, or by creating a new country. And here is the percentage threshold of how much provinces of your current country the rebellion needs to occupy before it is allowed to create their own country. So for example, if I type here 25, that means that the rebellion has to occupy at least 25% of your all provinces to create their own country. That setting is important to prevent rebellions to completely destroy smaller countries and turn them into their own countries. And you can also here choose the flag for your rebellion, or simply choose the rebellion watermark flag that will be applied on the flag of the country in which the rebellion occurred. For example, this one, rebel flag watermark with transparency here. And that is how you set up basic rebels settings. And now let me go to the separatism editor, which is a very simple editor. Like I have mentioned before, in our countries editor, we have various starting relations between countries. If I select one country, it has some starting relations which are historical relation modifiers between different countries. And for example, I can decide that this country here, Etania States, will have -10 penalty to relations with desert settlers. And it will become important when Etania States will acquire a province from desert settlers. Because here we have two thresholds for minor and major historical relations. For example, let me input here 5 and here -5, and those settings here determine which separatism effects will be applied to a province when it was annexed, acquired from the enemy country. When a province has a different culture that is unaccepted in our country, separatism effects take place, and the historical relations determine the severity of those effects. And here we have 3 separate editors that you can customize for your own needs. All of those editors edit one province effects. So those are effects that apply only to the newly acquired province. So separatism can occur only after acquiring a province from another country when this province has unaccepted culture in our country. And historical relations are determining which effects will happen out of those 3 effect collections. I highly recommend setting up here effects that will increase the rebellion probability. That way it can mess up the player's plans if they acquire too many foreign provinces at once. And that's it for our Rebels editor and Separatism editor. Thank you for listening and see you next time.